maybe the most interesting conversations I had with veterans were with African American veterans. And they were interesting in a lot of ways. They were interesting because many of the African American veterans who served in Korea were from the North. And if you think about even our country today where military bases are located, they're located in the South. And so you have a lot of African Americans coming from the North to be trained in the South. So they have no firsthand knowledge. I mean, they know about Jim Crow, they know about segregation, but they've never lived it, or they've lived a very modified version. And so when they come to the South, it's a real awakening for them. And individually speaking to these veterans, they decide a couple of things. They decide, I don't want to live in the South when I get out of the military. And they decide something like the South shouldn't be here. And if we're serving our country, we shouldn't have to come back to a country where there's a place where you ride on the back of the bus. And I remember one gentleman telling me, he went to buy shoes in the South. And he said he went into the shoe store and the clerk said he couldn't try on the shoes. He had to just buy the shoes without trying them on because he was black. And he said, I was from the North and I was in the Army and I tried on the shoes. What was he going to do? So, and others would talk about, they had white friends. And I talk a little bit about this in the book. The white friends would go into a restaurant in the South in town and sit down and order for a friend who was meeting them. And then they would show up. And often they'd get kicked out, but their own little stands. It was also interesting talking to African Americans from the South because they would go north after training and they'd go to Korea. And in Korea and Japan, there was not initially there's segregation in the units, but eventually it goes away. And so for them it was the idea, I'm not going back to the South. And so a lot of them end up right here in New York City. Many of them decide to come to northern cities, Chicago, New York. They don't go back home.